enough. So the first thing that you notice, of course, is how faint the images are. Now, lots of people would find that a sort of difficult thing, because it's maybe too low key for a lot of people. Why did you sort of turn the contrast down so much?
It has nothing to do with turning the contrast down or whatever. It's a long process. I take photography, then I rephotography, and when I rephotography, because it's kind of micro photography, I use lenses. I do it close to a window, and I have the reflection of the sky in the lenses, and this is what in a way erases the appearance of the images.
So the most important thing is the process, not the end product.
For me, the process is important because it's my life. It takes like nearly 2 months to make it. Of course, in 2 months I can make 10 pieces or 15 pieces, but the process in itself is quite long. Also because when I have what I think a good negative, I don't print them myself. And everything is organic, there is no computer or whatever, and this is really black and white paper like 19th century with, there are selenium tones also, which is the best quality for preservation of all what exists in the world for photography.
How long will that last then?
But the oldest one we have, treated with selenium, are still 100% the same. So this is the best.
Because if it faded anymore, it would be a problem, yeah?
Not for me, no. No, because there always would remain a trace. And what interests me is the trace. The idea, basically it starts, maybe you should see what there is in the other room.
Okay.
Because it starts, this is really the work. This is a portrait. And to work on Buddha, this is something different. That's Mr. Hoshi from the Maruno Uchi Gallery asked me to do. But normally, this is the most relevant thing I do. I do portraits on commission. And so it's not it's not a question of fading or not fading. It's just what I wanted to do is to give to the people an image that provoke a kind of human warmness when you discover the image, and a feeling of spirituality on one hand. Second hand, I wanted it to be very discreet, because when you have a flashy painting on the wall, after 2 days your subconscious erases it and you don't see it anymore. So this is like the wall, and if you want, I don't know, if you don't feel well or whatever, that you just sit in front of your portraits, and it's like a long corridor, tunnel. You go inside of yourself. So it's something like that. And third, as I said before, I wanted it to be low technology and very simple. So that's all. And in a way, it's the opposite to what is photography now, because as the Japanese say, they say shashin, which is copy of reality. In English or French, we say photography, which means to design with light or to draw with light. What I do is drawing with light. But most of the people, what they do is they try to copy the reality.
So you see this as, in a way, more real than...
closer to the reality. Also because, like for example, no, it's okay because you film me. If you take just a picture, it will be a piece of 1/60 of a second of me, and it will be like that or like that, and there is no reality in there. I did the portrait of that young woman, I think 2 years ago. If I make a portrait in 5 years, it will look quite the same in a way. And on the other hand, it works also like, if you think of someone you know, we always visualize in our brain. And but for example, you will remember me like tomorrow or in 1 week. You will mix maybe 5 or 10 impressions of image you had of me here in the gallery. If you think about your mother, you mix tightly, maybe 100,000 times you met her, and even it will be all mixed, even when you are 3 or 5 years old, and which also gives this impression that for you, your mother will always look younger than for me that would discover her today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In a way, it
Well,
works
it's like
that.
the older you get, the more you become yourself in other people's minds too, because it's an accumulation of different things seen at different times, and the person in the moment is not the total person.
Yeah, of course.
So you're going for a more the essence of the person. This style of photography gets at the essence of the person more than a more direct form of photography. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, it's kind of there but not there as well, and in a way that makes it more real to the mind, because you're sort of constantly switching between seeing it and not seeing it, and this process of constantly switching makes it feel more there. You know, if once you see a picture very clearly, you tend to like put it in a box,
Exactly.
you know. So that's why I thought this would be a very interesting exhibition. But of course, a lot of people will see this and they'll think, "What the hell is this?" And you know, this is a painting I can hardly see, and why would people buy this and this kind of thing. So there's going to be, of course, a kind of reaction against it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not easy to sell, but the people, when they have it at home, they send me email. They are really, even after 2 or 3 years, they still enjoy it, because it's like what I give is a slight trace, and you having the piece at home, it's the image built in your head, and day after day or week after week, and so it's still alive. It's like, here you have only 30% of the image, and the 70% is in your head, in reality.
Yeah.
You do the work, I don't. I just propose a
So it's a collaboration between the viewer and the artist,
Yeah.
and the subject, and it's sort of like the picture exists in a sort of middle point between the artist, the subject, and the viewer, whoever that viewer may be. Yeah. Now, you were asked to apply this very interesting technique to Buddhist sculptures and statues, and so could you tell me a little bit more about that?
But
Whose idea was that originally?
of Mr. Hoshi, because in reality, well, I have another part of my work is I work on old images from book that I scratch and repaint and rephotography. And at the time I was living in Brussels and working with a lot of black. And I had found an Italian book of Chinese antiques.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in there were some Buddha.
Sorry, there were some
Buddhas.
Uh-huh.
And so I did work on those. Also, the thing is, since I'm 12, I've been always very interested by Zen. It's something quite natural for me. It's not exotic in itself. And
how would you define Zen, though? Because
I won't do it. You asked me a question. I have an easy answer. I would not. But I live with this kind of philosophy, let's say, and Shinto also. I feel quite
some people would say that Zen is a kind of lack of focusing, not to focus on things too much, to keep that kind of open-ended attitude to everything at the same time.
Yeah, I think there are many ways to describe Zen, and this is one of those ways. So.
I mentioned that particular because there's obviously there is you're going for a very soft, fuzzy.
But here, people they talk about wabi-sabi when they see my work, which is quite true. Yes, it's very quite wabi and sabi. So about the Buddha you were mentioning, yes. So I was doing those Buddhas that are a mix between photography and painting. And when Mr. Hoshi saw that, well, he was not interested to exhibit it, but he said, I would like, if you accept, to go to Nara and Kyoto with you, for you to photography the real pieces, real Buddhas, and to apply the technique you use for your portraits. In the beginning, I was quite reluctant, because, well, it's not just a trick that I will photography everything with. Well, it's just pieces of wood. For me, the real name of those Buddhas, it's burnt Buddha floating in the water. And it refers to a Zen story, but maybe I will tell that later. And so, in a way, it works well because those Buddhas are from the 9th or 10th century. Some they have the pieces missing. Even this one, there is a head. If you go around, if you come here, you can see it.
Okay, so
here you see even better.
So
here,
just from the side, the head starts to appear.
Yeah.
That also suggests
is a bit too light.
That also suggests a kind of light around the head, exactly. A kind of a halo effect. So that maybe works to the advantage.
So the idea of, well, of course, the Buddha is not, this piece of wood is not any kind of subject. It's not like flowers or a chair. And for 10th centuries, people did pray in front of it or something like that. And you can imagine that with this kind of image, you feel all that spirit, you know what I mean? They are charged. That if you see an old Buddha like that and in a shrine, and you go and maybe there is something special about it. I don't know. I'm not a believer. But in a way, it reveals that being treated that way.
So the way that people have touched it emotionally, is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's like people praying in front of an object, then this object is charged with something from all those people.
It's like old religious statues, people touch them for good luck. And
this kind of thing also.
Yeah, and that kind of creates a patina. So in a way you're trying to photograph the patina of devotion.
What you say is really too precise. Maybe it has to do with it, but it's too precise. I would not put things in words like that.
That's the job of art journalists to do that,
exactly.
yes, to exaggerate and clarify and simplify. Well, they're very interesting works, and they do have a kind of strange atmosphere that normal paintings don't have. And I guess that's because it's forcing the brain to maybe work more than it's used to.
I would say no, it's the opposite. It forces you to relax. If you want to see, you really have to let go and relax. If you have to concentrate, sometimes, because I'm referring to the portraits or the things in general. And also, for me, it's not a question to see or not to see. It's just I know that I have, how do you call that? I know with a print, the less readable it can be and the more readable it can be. For example, this is the more, this is the less. And in that range, for me, it's all fine. And I don't control it because, as I said, I work close to the window. So in the winter time, in the summertime, if it's sunny, rainy, all that changes, and I don't control at 100%. And that's, of course, what I like. And I think that's what makes the work better. Because I think if you control everything, the result will be quite poor, because life and nature is so much stronger than we are. Just you know what I mean. I think that now with a computer, well, you can control everything, and then you end up with quite a poor image because you did not take advantage of accidents and what people would call face or God, whatever. Like, so when you work with advertising company, and then before they make a layout of what they want. The client has his ID, the agency has the ID, and now especially now with the digital, they see directly the result, and for sure they are losing a lot, because when they see what they have in mind, that's it. And all what will not look like that, they will say no, we don't want. But before, when we were working with the traditional photography, the photographer was shooting, and then like 1 week later or 3 days later, he was going to the agency, and the agency chose the photography that looks like what they had in mind, and then they say, oh, but this is interesting too, maybe we can propose that to the client also. And all this doesn't exist anymore. And it's like scientists, they complain that before, if you were going, I don't know, to the place where all those scientists were working, you had coach, and they were taking a nap quite often, and they say no, because of the computer it's impossible, you spend all your time in front of your computer, and they think during the nap they often had the right ideas.
That's when the brain does a lot of its work, and that's no longer available. But just to clarify, you say you work next to the window a lot, so that means you're developing the film not in a dark room, but with light.
No, I said when I rephotography, and because I don't want, again, I don't want to use artificial light, because I want to take advantage the most of the existing light, which is the light of the sky. It's like when I do the portrait, the first image I do, I place the person in front of the window, and me I am back in the window, and so you don't have too much shadows, and it's always daylight.
So how does the picture become, in a way, brighter and also less contrasty?
Because as I say, when I rephotography, I use, so that I have my image like that, and I use lenses, and the reflection of the sky. You have the reflection of the sky
on the glass.
On the glass, and so in a way, the kind of light gray you see, it's like a superposition of the image of the face and the sky. But I do it 2 or 3 times.
I see, so that evens it out, so you don't get clouds or other things from the sky. By doing it many times, it evens out the background texture.
And also because I'm kind in the macro photography, so far it's out of focus.
And so you're allowing the natural light to do the work, and you're not interfering too directly. I'm just curious about maybe how your dancing background informs your visual art, because maybe we can make an analogy between how a dancer responds to gravity and how you are allowing the light to work, not going against the light.
Oh, maybe yes. Also, it's a bit like to be in a river and to follow the flow of the river. Of course, I mean, yes, of course.
What can we say about your dancing background? How does that have any influence on how you work as an artist?
But it gives me some humility, I would say. Because you work with your body, it's painful, and then you interpret. Someone gives you a choreography, and you play the choreography like a piano player will play a piece of Bach, and some will take more freedom and some less. Yes, and as you said, to take. Not to think that you can control everything. In a way, it's the opposite than to be a film director, to be an interpreter, a dancer, or a classical ballet, or musician. It's just you have to to do the most with what you have, and to be realistic. A film director, it's the opposite. He says, I have a vision, let's paint everything in green, and then, especially in the commercial, in advertising and all that, and the customers, they like it, and I say, because then he say, oh no, and then I want it orange now. And people say, oh, he's a genius, and it's just fake and all that.
So it's the opposite of being a control freak. Okay, right, I think that should provide plenty of material. So that's probably more than enough. Thank you very much.
Look at what